Welcome to another episode of Her Head in Films. I'm Caitlin, and I'm your host. On this podcast, I share my thoughts and feelings about the films I watch. They tend to be art house and world cinema. What makes this podcast unique is that I weave together my life experiences with a personal and emotional discussion of film. I explore the impact that cinema has on me and why I connect so deeply to it. As I like to say, my head isn't in the clouds, my head is in films. If the podcast resonates with you and you want to help it thrive, Patreon is where I'm building a more connected space for listeners, offering bonus episodes, extra posts, and a direct way to show support for the work I'm doing here. If you want to be part of that community, join me at patreon.com/herheadinfilmspodcast. And as always, leaving a review or helping spread the word is appreciated. The link to my Patreon is in the show notes. On today's episode, I'm talking all about Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger's 1948 film, The Red Shoes. The film centers on Vicky Page, a gifted ballerina whose rise in the ballet world forces her into a devastating conflict between artistic greatness and romantic love. I explore how The Red Shoes looks at devotion to art, creative ambition, and a woman who dares to want more than what is considered acceptable. There are spoilers in this episode. I adore this film. I'm a big fan of Powell and Pressburger. I've actually been wanting to do an episode about The Red Shoes for a very long time. I think it's the kind of film that imprints itself on your psyche. I still remember years ago watching it for the first time and feeling so electrified by the ballet in the middle of the film, that 17-minute ballet sequence. For me, this film is as close to perfection as cinema gets. I don't feel that way about everything that I watch, but for me, I feel like this film transcends something, that it goes into another realm, particularly with that sequence in the middle of it, where we actually see the Red Shoes ballet. The colors are so vibrant and unforgettable. So I think this is a film that if you see it early on as a cinephile, like I did, I probably saw it in my early 20s, and I'm in my mid 30s now. I became a cinephile when I was in college, when I was about 20, 21 years old, and The Red Shoes was an early film for me. It is my favorite by Powell and Pressburger, but I certainly have more of their filmography to explore. But I think if you see it early on, maybe when you're young or just when you're on your cinephile journey and you're in that stage where you are voraciously devouring cinema. I remember those years so vividly when I was in my early 20s, and that was when I was watching all kinds of things for the first time, whether it was Varda or Tarkovsky or Bergman or Powell and Pressburger or Kiarostami, all kinds of different cinema that I had just never been exposed to. And for me, The Red Shoes has lasted in my mind. I just think it is magnificent, and I'm excited to do this episode and to talk about it and to go deeply into the film. That's what I do. I guess I'll do like a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a film historian, I'm not a film scholar. That's not what I offer in this space. I get interesting messages and sometimes even reviews left on this podcast. They are a bit unsettling, I will say that, and they usually come from men where something I think is expected from these episodes that I have never promised or never tried to offer. I'm not a film authority and I'm not a film scholar. I do research about the films, but my main focus and interest in these episodes is a kind of excavation of a film. You can find other podcast episodes about the Red Shoes that go into everything about Powell and Pressburger and the production for this film and the history and all that stuff. What I offer is my subjectivity, my deep and intense connection to a work of art, which for this podcast is film. At times, I'll get messages where people seem very frustrated that I meander in these episodes, that I talk in a personal way, a raw and emotional way, that these episodes are not optimized or perfect or polished, and that's never what they have ever tried to be. In a lot of ways, I see what I do as more of an audio diary. And so this is just a preface to let people know that. I felt very intensely about this film. And what I'm trying to communicate with you is that when I see Moira Shearer in this film and the character she's playing of Vicky Page, I feel a connection to her. I have all kinds of things that were generated inside of me as I watched this film, and I am offering that to you. And you can decide if that's of value or not. I am, in a lot of ways, similar to the people in the red shoes in their devotion to art. And I am devoted to art. It is the main thing that I am devoted to in my life now. And that's what this podcast has always been about, is about my devotion, almost a spiritual devotion to art, to what it gives us, what it makes us feel. That is what I'm going to talk about in this episode. And some people want that and connect to it and they like that, and other times people don't. I am not here to get to the point really quickly. I'm not trying to hook you. I'm not trying to be optimized or anything like that. I am trying to talk in a raw, emotional, authentic way about a work of art that moved me. And if you are interested in that, I hope that you stick around and you listen to the episode. If not, then this is not for you. I just sometimes get these weird, comments or messages. And I think it's okay to say that not everything is for everybody. I am for some people and I am not for other people. And I claim that and I own it. I am me. And this podcast has always been about a reflection of my inner world, my thoughts and feelings. And I am devoted to art. I don't just watch cinema. I read literature, I read poetry, I take in music. I feel very deeply. I live very deeply. I do. That is what I live for. I live for art. I live for art, love, and connection. That's what I've always said. That's what I live for. And in the red shoes, I think what moved me so much, particularly with this rewatch for this episode, is that this is about a group of people who do live for art. Now, that goes to very extreme places, and there's a cost to it when you are creating a work of art, when you're creating a ballet, or even creating a film, or you're engaged in any kind of collaborative art form. But fundamentally, these are people devoted and committed to art. There's an intensity about that permeates the film. And that's really what I want to dig into, is that. But there's a few other things I'll be focusing on. But for the most part, I just loved that single-minded devotion to art. And I think it's a really important aspect of the film, along with the character of Vicky Page and what she represents for me and what she really makes me feel when I watch her on the screen through Moira Shearer, of course. So, just some basic facts about the cast of this film. It's directed by Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger, as I said. Together, they were a duo known as the Archers, and they made some of the greatest British cinema that has ever been created. I also love Black Narcissus and A Matter of Life and Death. Those are the main ones that I've seen. Like I said, I still have more of their work to watch, and I'd also like to see more by Michael Powell. But The Red Shoes for me just stands as such a singular and extraordinary accomplishment. The cinematography was by the magnificent Jack Cardiff, who worked with them on some films, and he also did work outside of Powell and Pressburger. One of my favorites by him, perhaps my favorite by him, is Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. If you love the red shoes and you love the universe that it creates and the colors and all of that, check out Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. It is absolutely breathtaking, that cinematography. I don't think I've ever encountered a film like that before. I don't know if I would do an episode, but it's one that I still think about. And I feel like at some point I have to rewatch it. But it's a stunning Technicolor accomplishment by him. The music in the film was composed by Brian Easdale. He won an Academy Award for it. Our main characters are Vicky Page, played by Maura Shearer, who herself was a rising ballerina in Sadler Wells. We have Boris Lermontov, played by the gorgeous Anton Walbrook. I have to say, I have such a major crush on Anton Walbrook. I have for many, many years. I also love him in Max Ophuls films. He's wonderful in those. I've always wanted to have a little bit of a Anton Walbrook marathon where I go back and watch some of his earlier roles. I know he was in a version of Gaslight, but I adore him in The Red Shoes. That's probably where I first saw him. He has such a raw sexuality in the film, which is very necessary. He's seductive and alluring and intense and frightening and dominating, but he is also incredibly beautiful to look at. So I love Anton Walbrook. We have Julian Craster, who is played by Marius Goring, and he is Vicky's love interest, the composer who she falls in love with. We have Leonid Massine playing Grisha Lubov in the film. He's a choreographer in the film, and he also is in the Red Shoes ballet as the shoemaker. And he himself was a Russian choreographer and well-known ballet dancer. So that's our main cast. We have Vicky, we have Lermontov, and we have Julian. Those are our three main characters in a kind of, I guess you could call it a love triangle, right? But the film is so much more than that. But those are our principal characters. I did want to say that The Red Shoes is based on a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen, the title of which is also The Red Shoes. And it's about a young woman, Karen, who becomes taken over by a pair of red shoes. And in the fairy tale, at first she starts out as a poor orphan girl. She ends up losing her mother, and an elderly lady adopts her, and she acquires these red shoes. Throughout the story, she loves the red shoes, right? They're beautiful and they entrance her, but when she tries to wear them, sometimes she'll wear them to church, or she'll wear them to her confirmation, and she's judged for how much she loves these red shoes, and she's punished because of it. And one night she puts on these red shoes, and the elderly woman who adopted her when she was very young becomes ill and is essentially dying. But there's a ball that's going on at the same time. And Karen puts on the red shoes and wants to go to the ball. The red shoes take her over, and they continue to dance even when Karen tries to take them off. There comes a point when she cannot take them off. They dance and dance and dance. I found this quote to be really interesting from the original fairy tale. It goes, "Dance she did, and dance she must, straight into the dark woods. Dance she must." That's something that will appear in the film. This idea that Vicky must dance, that she has to dance. So the shoes keep dancing, and they dance her everywhere, into the woods, over the fields, and they take her to the home of the executioner. And the only way that she can be free of these shoes is for the executioner to chop off her feet. And so he does. He cuts off her feet and makes her wooden feet and gives her crutches. She eventually ends up going to live at a parsonage, and one day she's at the end of it, she's in church and she dies. She ends up dying really of a broken heart. That's what it says in the story, that her heart breaks and she dies and her soul goes to heaven. But essentially, the Red Shoes fairy tale is a story about a woman being punished for perceived vanity and pride. Because every time she wore those red shoes, everybody judged her for it. Everybody thought, why is she wearing those red shoes, those beautiful, fancy red shoes at church or at her confirmation? And why would she go to a ball when this woman is dying? She is seen as selfish and vain and prideful. That's what the red shoes come to represent in that story. And as a young woman, she's punished for that. She's punished for wanting those beautiful red shoes. And you could argue she's punished for wanting at all, for wanting anything at all. And this was a very powerful thing that occurred to me when I was watching this film. And it's sort of my central thesis, I guess you could say, of this episode, or one of the central things that I have been thinking a lot about since I watched it. And that is, what is a woman allowed to want? For me, that's what this film comes down to. I think it's much more complicated than the message of love or art, right? A romantic relationship or a creative pursuit. I think that's also an important part of the film, and I'll be talking about that. And it is about devotion to art itself. What will you sacrifice? What will you give up to realize, to not just realize a work of art, perhaps, but to realize your destiny, to realize your creative potential? But I think it's also about, what is a woman allowed to want? What is she allowed to desire? What is she allowed to lay claim to? Because the original Red Shoes is about a young woman who wants something. She wants those red shoes, and she is ultimately punished for it. And I think that resonates with a lot of women. I know it resonates with me. What am I allowed to want and desire in this life? And I also wanted to say why I felt drawn to this film right now, because I could have done an episode about a lot of different films. I always have a very long list of movies that I want to cover on this podcast. And I think for me right now in my life, I'm in a very fragile period because my mother died about 7 months ago. And my father died when I was a teenager, and I'm in my mid 30s right now. I am, in a lot of ways, I am an orphan. I'm an orphan just like Karen in the original fairy tale. My mother's gone, and I am alone in the world. What do I live for? Well, I told you earlier, I live for art. That's one of the things that I live for. And so I feel drawn at the moment to films about women who are very passionate, women who feel, who are emotional, women who are boundless and creative. Like, that was why I specifically chose this film, because I realized that right now I'm living for art, I'm living for myself, I'm trying to find a way to survive in the world. And in a way, you have to want something in order to fully live. I believe that desire is the lifeblood, right? I mean, what is one of the symptoms when we feel depressed? We don't want anything. We don't desire anything. We feel this numbness. Desire and wanting, they are what keep us getting up each day. And so something that I've really been connecting to is my life force, my creativity, my passion. How do I have passion for life and love for life? How do I do that when everything I knew has been taken from me? When everybody I love has been taken from me? My father, my mother, I've lost so much, and I'm on my own in the world and so alone. What do I connect to? Who am I? I don't have a partner. I don't have children. I'm estranged from my family. What am I living for? And I guess all of us have to ask that question that Lermontov asks Vicky in the film. What do you want to do in life? And she says, to dance. I want to dance. Do you want to just live, or do you want to dance? Right? She's not just living, she has to dance. She has to create. That's her life force. That's who she is. She's a dancer. She wants to dance. That's why she's alive. That's what this film is about. It's about an artist. It's about a female artist, a female dancer, connecting with her own creative life force. And it comes from within her. That is why I am talking about this film. That's why I chose to do an episode about it, because I was drawn to Vicky's passion and ambition and her wanting, her unapologetic wanting. Not only does she want to dance, she wants to be a great dancer. And she knows that Lermontov can make her a great dancer. She wants to be consumed by something. She wants to give herself to something. That's also what I feel that this film is about. And so for me, I don't know if her choice is just between love of a man and love of ballet. I think her choice is also one between devoting herself to a more ordinary path, which is Julian, and getting married and having children. That is something that eventually Moira Shearer herself did. She eventually left ballet and had a family. And a lot of ballerinas go through that, where they have to leave it. They have to leave this art form and have a more domestic life. I think the choice might be the choice. There's many choices happening. Choice between a more maybe ordinary life, a life with a husband and children, and a more extraordinary life, an unconventional life, a passionate life. The husband is the ordinary life, and the ballet represents the extraordinary life. It depends on the viewer, but I, as a woman watching the film, thought about what are my choices. My choice is not necessarily between a partner and my creative expression. But I do think that for me, the fork in the road, the two things that I'm choosing between, perhaps, and we can argue if you should even have to choose at all. It goes without saying that a woman should not have to choose between the domestic life and her creative expression. Vicky should be able to be in the ballet and be with Julian. But a lot of women do come up against those limitations where they cannot have the children and the husband and do the art that they feel like they need to do. One is sacrificed for the other over and over again, or you go back and forth, or you can never have both at the same time, or you have both at the same time in a very limited way or temporarily. Because there is a point at which she does have Julian and she is able to dance, right? But it's short lived. I think for me right now in my life, the choice is not between a partner or a romantic relationship and my ambitions, but I think for me, the choice is I am rejecting perhaps a more conventional life and choosing a life that is more aligned with who I am. Like I said, I'm in my mid 30s. I don't have a partner. I don't have children. I've never been in a romantic relationship. In some ways, I would be considered a spinster, right? And I'm doing work to reclaim that whole idea of spinsterhood and what does that mean to me? And really thinking about, do I even want that in my life? Do I even want to pursue that ever? Or do I want to just belong to myself and focus on myself and have a life that does not fit what you would expect a lot of women to have? Because where I live in the rural South, a lot of women my age already have children. They've certainly dated, they've certainly had boyfriends, and they're usually married. They are settled down into a domestic life. I don't have that. And I'm not even saying that I want it at this point. It depends on the day. Sometimes I'm okay, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes there's a deep aching and a longing for love and care. And then other times I realize I need my solitude and I'm probably better off alone. But for me, the fork in the road is a conventional life or an unconventional life. And taking ownership over my path is going to be different from other people's path. I'm going to be single. I'm going to be the spinster. I'm going to live on my own. I'm going to have a life that's more about writing and creativity and this podcast. I mean, how many people say, well, I have a film podcast? Like, it's weird. It's weird to even say that to people. I have a film podcast. I think I'm coming to terms with like, I don't necessarily want that conventional path, but it's very lonely to walk the unconventional path where you don't have all the things that people expect you to have as a 36-year-old woman. And at times you haven't had any of them. I haven't had the boyfriend and the romance and all that. And I always have felt like in a way that maybe I wasn't meant to love one person. I've said this before, but I don't know if I was meant to love one person romantically or to devote myself to a person or to give myself to a relationship. I feel that in some ways I was meant to perhaps love the world or love these art forms that I talk about and that I share. Maybe my love is too large. Maybe my love is too capacious and boundless to put it into one person. And it has to be channeled into writing, podcasting, creating, expressing myself. I don't know. I mean, that isn't to say that I don't want love. We need love, don't we? But love is not enough for her. She is a woman who needs more than that romantic love. She needs more than Julian. And that is perhaps one of her greatest crimes in the society she's living in as a woman, to need more than that relationship, to want more than Julian. She wants to be on that stage. She wants to express herself. And that's a really powerful aspect of the film. And I feel the same way. Even if I were in a relationship, perhaps, that would not be enough for me. That I have to channel my life force and my love into multiple containers and put it in multiple places. I don't feel that it would ever be enough for me. I think there is a judgment of women who can't get enough if something is not enough for us. I think women are often conditioned to just accept what they're given. I think a woman like me is also conditioned to take what I can get. I don't fit beauty standards and things like that. And there's this idea, and I felt it throughout my life. You're just supposed to take the crumbs that people give you. You're supposed to take the scraps. And I think a lot of women are told this. Don't have needs. Don't ask for more. Don't want anything more than what you are given. When you are a woman like Vicky or a woman like me, it's not enough. It's not enough. She wants more. She dares to want more. She dares to want to not just be a ballerina, but to be a great ballerina. She dares to want more than marriage and more than Julian. And for me, I've always felt like I wanted more than what life has given me. I want more. I'm not, I guess, happy or satisfied or satiated by what I've had in my life. I've always felt like this very intense, passionate person, and I never got to have everything that I truly wanted. And I've had to figure out a way to deal with that desire for more, that desire for a more expansive life. And that's partly why I think I write and I do this podcast, is because it's not enough for me to just be in the rural South and to be totally invisible and silent and to be alone. It's like I want to speak. I want to say something. I want to share myself. I have thoughts, I have opinions, I have passions. In some ways this podcast has been a way in which I dare to be boundless, or I dare to speak. I dare to want more than what life has given me. I've always felt voracious. I've always just felt like at one it's interesting because I feel both voracious and starved. I feel starved of the things that I truly desire and want. And the world has just thrown me a lot of crumbs and scraps and told me, well, you need to just get used to that. You shouldn't want more. You shouldn't speak. You shouldn't desire. And a big part of my 30s, getting into my 30s, has been saying, no, I want more and I deserve more. I deserve better. And I will not settle for the scraps. I will not settle for the crumbs that people give me. And that's a very dangerous thing when you say no, when you say it's not enough, and when you dare to want more. And something very powerful about Vicky is that wanting in her, that fire, that passion, that ambition. I quite love it. Like, I love seeing a woman who wants more. And I feel like that the film is about that in a lot of ways. And for her to choose the ballet at the very end is subversive. When she's between Lermontov and Julian, she wants the ballet. Choosing the ballet is a kind of rebellion and a kind of resistance because it means that she's choosing herself, choosing her passion and her creativity, and she's not choosing the man. And that's very threatening. She does not choose Julian in that moment. In that moment, she hears another calling. She hears another voice that wants the ballet. She's choosing her own creative self. And I find that inspiring for me in my life, that I'm choosing my own creative self, my own life force. I am devoting myself to it. And I think that's why I needed to rewatch this film, because my path in this life is not romantic, not conventional. It is about my own devotion, my passion for art, my devotion to not just myself, but to writing. And when I am writing, I imagine that it's what Vicky feels when she's on the stage, or when an actress is inside the performance that she's doing, or a woman is painting or drawing, or another woman is singing. Like, what I feel when I'm writing is that I access my own aliveness that is very life saving for me. And it's hard to put it into words. Even sometimes when I'm recording these episodes, I feel like I am accessing a kind of aliveness, because when I'm talking and when I'm sharing what I think and what I feel, I'm expressing myself. And I think human expression is vital. It's the expression of the soul. We should never be asked to give that up. That is the crime in the film at all, at the end, is that Julian would ever ask her to give it up. How dare you? How dare you ask somebody to give up what makes them feel most alive? That's not love, is it? Expressing myself, whether it is through these episodes or through my writing, that is my aliveness. And I've always felt a very deep and intense inner life, almost like this energy inside myself, this inner world that I haven't really known how to express to other people. I think it's actually made it very hard for me to be in the world, to be around people, because I'm just so in myself and in my inner world. And I love being there. I love being in my own mind. I love being with my own thoughts. And I've never really found many people who I felt like I could share the fullness and the boundlessness of myself. It's been very, very rare. And I've never felt it romantically necessarily, but I've always wanted it. I've always wanted to share that inner world. And that is why I write. That is why I do these episodes. Because when I do that, my inner world spills out. My essence comes out. And I find that to be really important for me, like really essential and necessary, almost healing. It's cathartic and it can be very healing. It doesn't solve everything in life. I'm not saying that writing is a substitute for human connection or something like that, but sometimes it's the consolation or it's a compensation for what we may lack in other parts of our life, right? It doesn't solve everything, it doesn't fix everything, but it can make life more bearable when we're able to express ourselves in some way. And I think that creative women, and all of us are creative, right? But there are some people who I think are more deeply connected to that creativity. They live in it day in and day out. They need to express themselves either through writing, painting, crocheting, crafting. There's all kinds of ways that you can express your creativity. But I think that creative women who really live in that life force can be dangerous, because we dare to feel, to desire, to want, to need, to be intense, to spill over. Think about actresses and dancers, and particularly in that 17-minute sequence of the red shoes in the middle of the film, you feel Vicky come alive. You feel her power be unleashed. It's something that can't really be tamed or controlled. I feel most free when I'm expressing myself, when I'm writing, when I'm speaking. It's a kind of autonomy and sovereignty, and it is dangerous and threatening, right? To a society that doesn't want women to be like that. And sometimes you don't even know what to do with that intensity and that energy. It's dangerous and powerful, and sometimes it can scare you what you feel inside yourself, the intensity of what you feel. I haven't always known what to do with all the passion and the intensity and everything in me. I've tried to channel it into writing, into this work on this podcast, but I do think it still scares me. And I don't know at times if I'm really unlocking everything inside me the way that I want to. I still feel like maybe I'm holding back, or I'm not fully unleashing all of it or sharing as much as I could. And something that's really powerful to me is when Vicky meets Lermontov, played by Anton Walbrook. I don't want to say that Lermontov creates her or anything like that, but I do think sometimes women can look for permission to be ambitious, to be their full selves. Sometimes you're looking for someone who unlocks all of it, who identifies it, who recognizes what is inside us, who sees us, right? Who sees our potential, sees how special and unique and powerful we are. He sees it. He sees her in a way that she's never been seen before. He's very tyrannical, he's very brutal, he's a very painful presence in her life by the end of the film. But when they first meet, there is something very electrifying about it because you have two equals. She's a great ballerina. He's great at what he does with the ballet company. He's based on Diaghilev, and the ballet Lermontov is based on the ballet Russe, which is a really fascinating story. They're equals. She's the ballerina. He's the person who brings it all together. He sees her greatness, and she knows he sees her greatness. So much of this film is about the way he looks at her. I don't know how Anton Walbrook does it, but the way he looks at her, I would love for somebody to look at me like that. I need that. I need someone to look at me the way that Anton Walbrook looks at Moira Shearer in the red shoes. He sees into her. It's almost like he sees into her soul. He chooses her. And their partnership gives birth to greatness. I mean, think about the partnership between Powell and Pressburger. Two equals, two people who come together and make some of the greatest films ever made because something clicked. Lermontov, he gives her the environment to release the greatness and to allow it to flourish. Because the thing about a ballerina, the thing about any woman in the performing arts, actresses would be included in this as well, is that you're not doing your art in isolation, particularly with ballet. There's costumes, there's music, there's the production, there's the choreography, the set design. There are so many people involved in making this come together. And I love that aspect of the Red Shoes. I love how it shows all those moving parts. I love seeing the backstage stuff about the ballet, all the different personalities and egos that are clashing, from composing the music to creating the costumes, the rehearsals, all of it. It's a reminder that a work of art is not just born in a vacuum. It doesn't come from nowhere or nothing. It is the product of multiple people working in tandem toward the goal of creating that work of art. And usually the director is there to bring it all together the way that Lermontov does with the ballet. A ballerina cannot exist in isolation. She needs the ballets themselves that were created years and years before she was ever born. She needs the composers and the choreographers. So Vicky's greatness is contingent on her being in an environment where it can be noticed and identified and nurtured and displayed. And that is what she gets with Ballet Lermontov. And through Lermontov is she gets everything that she needs to thrive finally and to flourish and to step into her greatness. It takes both her being prepared and her being ready, and she certainly is. And then it takes him creating that environment for her. And not all women artists, not all creative women get to have that. Not all of them get discovered. Not all of them are seen and chosen in that way. And she is. But she's also so brilliant herself. She's able to step into the moment and to meet it, right? Because ballet is her religion, just like it is Lermontov's religion. We hear that in the film, that he sees it as a religion. As I said, when they first meet for the first time, it is electric because he sees her in a way that she's never been seen before. And he says, "Why do you want to dance?" And she asks him, "Why do you want to live?" And he says, "Because I must." And her response is, that's my answer. That's why I have to dance. She must dance. She doesn't have any choice. And they take art seriously. They take ballet seriously. And Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger took art seriously. This film was made 3 years after the end of the Second World War, which ended in 1945. This film comes out in 1948. There's a wonderful quote by Michael Powell where he says, quote, "For 10 years, we had all been told to go out and die for freedom and democracy. But now the war was over. The red shoes told us to go out and die for art," unquote. And so what Lermontov and Vicky find in each other is this willingness to both live for art and to die for art. And not everybody takes art that seriously. Not everybody puts it on that level, right? I think that there is always an electricity between two people who are deeply passionate about the same thing. And their passion is ballet. Ballet is her life. It's what she lives for. And in the end, it is what she will die for. And you feel that fire in her. And it matches the red so well throughout the film. Even the red in her hair is beautifully captured. I love that red is the main color. The Red Shoes fairy tale, the ballet, and the that whole color is filled with passion, with intensity, with fire. And you feel that in Vicky. You feel that she lives it. She lives it. You know, when she asks him, "Why do you want to live?" And he says, "I must." And then she responds, "Well, that's why I dance." She's essentially saying, "I must dance. This is what I have to do." I was reminded of a great quote by Rilke in his book, Letters to a Young Poet. And I think that any person who is creative and artistic can see themselves in Vicky. Whether you're a writer, filmmaker, dancer, musician, you will feel that jolt of recognition in what she says. That this art, whatever art you are passionate about, is life. It is a form of breathing. And this film really asks the creative person, I think, how devoted are you? What will you sacrifice for it? What will you give up for it? What will it cost you? And for Vicky, there will be a great cost. But in a lot of ways, she's willing to pay that cost. Because also, I think for her, what's so dangerous about her as a character is that nothing is above ballet for her. This may also be why artistic, creative women can be threatening. Nothing is above ballet. Not a man, not a cause, nothing. Her devotion to ballet is also, I think, about a devotion to herself, a devotion to her talent, a belief in her talent, and a belief in her greatness. She knows it. She knows that she has the seed of greatness inside her. And I think she knows when she meets Lermontov that she will get to truly step into who she's meant to be. She must dance. She does not have a choice in it. And if you think about the symbol or the image of the red shoes, they dance and dance and they will not stop. Just like she can't stop, she must dance. And so the Rilke quote from Letters to a Young Poet, I really want to share it because it is about the impetus. It is about the necessity of creating. And so he says, quote, "There is only one way. Go within. Search for the cause. Find the impetus that bids you write. Put it to this test. Does it stretch out its roots in the deepest place of your heart? Can you avow that you would die if you were forbidden to write? Above all, and in the most silent hour of your night, ask yourself this: must I write? Dig deep into yourself for a true answer, and if it should ring its assent, if you can confidently meet this serious question with a simple I must, then build your life upon it. It has become your necessity. Your life, in even the most mundane and least significant hour, must become a sign, a testimony to this urge." Unquote. As I said earlier, ballet is her life force. She is going toward her aliveness through the ballet. And I also said earlier that for me, my aliveness is tied to writing and expressing myself. And I read Letters to a Young Poet very young when I was in my teens. I still remember reading it for the first time when I was a teenager. And I remember being so astonished by that quote in particular. I've always remembered the words. It's always like echoing in my head that if you were forbidden, if something stopped you from being able to do it, would you still say that I have to do this? Rilke in that quote is saying that's the criterion. You have to be truly honest with yourself. That is the question and the criterion. Must you do it? And Vicky does. And that's what you listen to. If it's like that for you, or if it's not like that for you, then don't do it. You shouldn't be doing it. And so what Lermontov and Vicky realize is that they both take art very seriously, that they must be part of it. But Vicky in particular, she's the artist, she's the one doing the choreography. She's the one on the stage. This is what she must do. And I do think there are people who would criticize this view, like this kind of pretentious idea about art, that it's more important than anything else and it's more important than life itself. And they might criticize those who exalt art too much and put it on a pedestal and maybe even put art above people, where they don't even care how people are treated in the creation of the art. And that's a fair criticism, right? Because there are people like that. There are directors, there are all kinds of people who care more about the art than they do about the people. That's not right, of course. But I think at the same time, there are some of us where there's no other way to live, that it's not life at all. It's not life at all if she can't dance. She doesn't want to go back with Julian at the end. She doesn't want to go back to her old life or the life she lived away from Lermontov. As poisonous as that man is, and domineering and possessive and jealous, what she accesses on that stage, that aliveness, she cannot give it up again. She will not give it up again, because life is not life at all if she cannot dance. And that's what I think she's saying to Lermontov in that scene. When she asks him, "Why do you want to live?" He's like, "Well, I must live." And that's her answer, right? If you take ballet out of Vicky's life, that is not life to her. It is not enough. Life by itself without ballet is not enough. And that's part of her ambition, her desire, and the thing that in a way you can be punished for as a woman, is that I want more. I dare to want more than what life is handing me. And think about the 1940s. Think about the options that were available to women back then. You're supposed to just put up with it, take care of everybody, be the wife, be the mother, not have any needs. And even today, that's around. It's not exactly the same. Of course not. I would never compare and say that it's the exact same. But there is still this pervasive idea that women should sacrifice themselves on the altar of romantic love, not love of an art form. not a creative pursuit, that you're supposed to be devoted to love, give yourself up for love. And we often see that. We often see it in the romantic films. But how often do we see a film like The Red Shoes that gives us the message, what if you sacrificed everything at the altar of art, at the altar of your creative soul? What if you gave yourself to that, poured your energy into that instead of a man? I mean, how many films do we get about women like this? And the tragedy is that she lives in a world and in a society that doesn't know what to do with that, doesn't know what to do with a woman who wants to be on that stage and wants to be great and wants to be ambitious and wants to wear the red shoes and wants to unapologetically wear the red shoes. She wants wholeness. I think that's ultimately the tragedy of the film. She wants wholeness, and her creativity is part of her wholeness. Expressing herself, dancing is part of her wholeness. But in the world she exists in, it's one or the other. It's either the ordinary life or the extraordinary life, and you have to sacrifice. And she can't do it. She doesn't want to sacrifice the ballet for being with Julian. She wants to be in the ballet. I've always been fascinated by ballet. I went through this period years ago where I was watching all kinds of ballet films and documentaries. I got very interested in the Ballet Russe. I liked Black Swan. I thought that was an interesting film. I really love an Ingmar Bergman film called Summer Interlude, which is also about a ballerina. I've always loved the look of ballet films. But the thing about ballet is that it's a very punishing art form. It's punishing on women's bodies. It requires a kind of policing of women's bodies, a discipline and restriction. It's just very hard on a woman's body, right? Like to be on point, to keep your body at a certain weight, the way that you look. Like there's all kinds of ways that it can be very difficult for women in that world. It's a beautiful art form. It's very beautiful to look at, but there is a pain involved in it. And that's part of the sacrifice, is that you have to have this strict control over yourself. Lermontov as a character also has a lot of control over Vicky. Either way, she can't really escape the influence of men. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. That if she goes with Julian, that's still a man defining her life. That even when she's trying to pursue her passion of ballet, Lermontov has this power and domination over her. I think she still has her own agency, of course, and the artistry of her dancing, but there's a friction because there is a cost to this art form. It's a beautiful art. Dance is beautiful. Ballet is beautiful, but it's a beauty that comes with sacrifice, with physical pain, with pushing your body to its limits, and also having to deal with the influence of somebody like Lermontov, with other people having power over you, judging you, picking you apart, expecting you to be perfect. It's a world of power struggles and power dynamics that are not balanced. And she knows all that, and she still is a dancer and still chooses to do ballet. And to make that sacrifice, that's part of her devotion to it. The thing about ballet, it's kind of similar. It can be a bit similar to being an actress, being on the stage, or being in films. There can be a time limit to it. There is a time limit with ballet, that you only have so many years where you get to be the top ballerina. And we see that when Irina leaves and she does get married, and romantic love takes her away from the ballet. But also, she wants to settle down and she's probably getting older as well. That happens to ballerinas. They age out. There's only a certain period of time, even with actresses, where they are getting their best roles. And as they get older, those roles may diminish. Not everybody gets to be Meryl Streep, where you're getting films constantly. There can be this sense that you get your moment in the sun. It can be temporary. And that is what's cruel about it, is that you have to strike while the iron is hot. You're only on top for a certain period of time within that art form. And that creates a kind of fragility, I think, probably being a ballerina, is that you can only be at that level of greatness for a short period of time. Vicky experiences that a bit. And the thing about the red shoes is that it's not just about creative people in terms of like amateurs. It's not just about the creative spirit. It's also about people who are ambitious with their creativity. Vicky could dance at other ballet companies, and she does for a little while. When she goes with Julian and she leaves Lermontov, she can be a ballerina other places. It's not like Lermontov is the only ballet that exists. It's the fact that she wants greatness. There are creative people where it's not enough to just write a blog. It's not enough to just self publish a book. It's not enough to have an album that nobody listens to or to play little dive bars. There are people in this world where, and particularly women, who want more than that. They want to be a great musician, a great writer. They want to win literary awards. They want to be in the best ballet that they can possibly be in. And this film shows the cost of living at that kind of level. It shows the price you pay to achieve greatness, shows what it takes to achieve greatness. This is very different than wanting to be a biologist or an engineer. When you want to be an actress or a ballerina or a great writer, you are entering a different world, a different level of ambition and expectation. Your success is based on other people's attention and validation. It's based on your connections. It's based on what you have access to. Some people are chosen and some are not. Some people make it and some don't. And it's not always based on talent. It's about what Boris Lermontov thinks about you. And if he doesn't like you or he takes a dislike to you, you're fired. He gets rid of Julian out of his jealousy. Because even though he expects his ballerinas to not feel anything and to not fall in love, because if they fall in love, then he doesn't have power over them anymore. He himself develops feelings for Vicky. You can tell that he does. And his jealousy leads him to fire Julian. In the world of the performing arts in particular, there's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of complicated dynamics. And if you want to be a great artist, a great writer, a great dancer, it does take sacrifice. It does take almost probably a superhuman devotion to it, to making it. And Vicky knows that. She doesn't want to be an average ballerina. She wants to be a great dancer, a great artist. And Lermontov gives her that. Because later on there's another conversation they have, and he refers to the first time they met, and she asked him, "Why do you want to live?" And he says in the second conversation later in the film, "I don't want to just live. I want to create, and I want to create something great." He wants to make a great dancer out of her. You can tell in her eyes that she is lit up by it, right? That she is electrified by it. That's exactly what she wants to hear. She wants him to look at her like that. She wants him to say that to her. She wants to be great, and she dares to want that. And you're not supposed to, as a woman. You're not supposed to say, I don't want to just be a writer. I want to be a great writer. I want my name to be known. I don't want to just be I don't want to just be a painter. I want to be a great painter. I want to be in galleries. I want people to come look at my paintings and talk about me. I don't want to just be a ballet dancer in any company. I want to be the best ballet dancer, and I want everybody in the world to know my name, right? I want to be a star. I want to be great. I want to be immortal. I want to be remembered. You're not supposed to want that as a woman. You're not supposed to say that out loud. How much you want something, how much you desire. I read a really good book about the Red Shoes. It's from a series by BFI Classics. The British Film Institute has a really great series of books, and each book is dedicated to a different film. They have all kinds. They have books about Picnic at Hanging Rock, Three Women, Vertigo, and they have one about The Red Shoes by Pamela Hutchinson. And in the book, Pamela Hutchinson connects Vicky's ambition with a kind of monstrousness. That women who are willing to sacrifice everything for their art or for some pursuit outside of men and outside of romance and domesticity, that those women are often coded as monstrous. And I thought that was like a really interesting aspect of Pamela's book. And if you want to learn more about the making of the film, I definitely recommend that. And I did read it for this episode. And I like what she had to say about the monstrousness. Women are not conditioned to be selfish. And so when a woman dares to be selfish, to put herself first before anything else, and to put her own ambition and what it takes to be a great artist, when she puts that above everything else, that is often seen as monstrosity, perhaps. And Pamela also writes about how we are implicated in the monstrousness because she says, quote, "The horror of the red shoes for this viewer is the recognition of this monstrousness within oneself. When the final performance of the red shoes ends, intercut with Julian removing the shoes from Vicky's feet, Boris's head falls back, his mouth opens. The speech he makes that night is rasping and almost robotic. He has lost something, a fragment of his humanity, leaving him a truly heartless monster. Vicky's tragedy is his catharsis too, and ours. Didn't we want Vicky to keep on dancing?" Unquote. And so when I talk about how strict and punishing and difficult ballet is, and when we talk about the sacrifices that have to be made for art, we forget that we are the ones consuming the art. And so even though we know about those sacrifices, we know what ballet might do to a woman's feet or to her body, the pain that she might be in to look a certain way, or when we know what it takes to make a film. I mean, people have died on the productions of film sets, right? In the creation of certain works of art, people's lives have been sacrificed or diminished, but we still want the films and we still want the ballets and we still want the art. We are not separate from that. And so I love how Pamela Hutchinson brings up that we can be complicit in this monstrousness, right? Because we take that art in. And sometimes the sacrifice is part of the transcendence of it for people. It's like, look at what these people created, pushing themselves to the limits. Look at the sacrifice that was made for this work of art. Sometimes that can make it even more intense for people. But we as audiences are not going to stop going to see the ballet. We're not going to stop watching films, even though we know the sacrifices that might go into certain art forms or how difficult and punishing it might be for certain women in these places. Sometimes we know of the price, we know of the sacrifice, but we want Vicky to keep dancing. And halfway through the film, we get that 17-minute dance sequence that plays out the fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. We get the red shoes. We get a ballet within a film. And it was very unique for its time, the way that it was filmed. I love how we get Vicky's perspective at times of her dancing the ballet. It is absolutely magical to watch it, isn't it? It's magical and mysterious the way all the moving parts that we saw leading up to the ballet, how all of that comes together. Everybody rises to the moment to create this ballet, and it's mesmerizing to watch. It's hard to talk about because you have to watch it. When you watch it for 17 minutes as she goes through and she sees the red shoes and she puts them on and she ends up eventually dying, you go on this entire journey in 17 minutes. And before Vicky goes on to do that performance, Lermontov tells her, dance with ecstasy. I love that. Dance with ecstasy. That is her aliveness when she's actually on stage dancing. The thing is for a lot of the film, we have not even seen her dance. We've only seen it here and there. We've mainly seen the behind the scenes drama and what it takes to create the ballet. But for those 17 minutes, we finally get to see her dance. We get to see her in that ecstasy. And it's like this separate universe this separate space where I believe she is fully alive, fully her own, and belongs to herself in that ecstasy. The ecstasy of the art, the ecstasy of the dance. She surrenders to something greater than herself, which is the ballet that all these people have helped create. That's why I think he calls it a religion. It's this higher power almost, this thing that is greater than himself, Lermontov, and it's even greater than Vicky herself. She surrenders to it and she dances. It's a loss of self, but I also feel like she's finding herself at the same time. She's fully in herself and in her body, but it's also transcendent and magical and life affirming. It's alive. It's so alive, right? She lives inside of it, inside of those 17 minutes, suspended there in the world of the red shoes. She's right there in it. That's when she's fully free because Lermontov is not there, Julian's not there, nobody's there but her. Everything else is just noise and it melts away. And she's just there, dancing in the moment. There's something liberating and delicious about it. That surrender. That's her wholeness. That's when she's whole, is right there inside that dance. And that's what makes it even more tragic and unbearable in the final scene of the film because we saw those 17 minutes. We saw what she can do. We saw her greatness. When Julian is there, she has Julian on one side, Lermontov on the other side, and she left for a little while and then she comes back to Lermontov and she wants to dance the red shoes. She wants that feeling again. She doesn't want to just experience it one time. She doesn't want to just have it for a very short period of time like she does. Those 17 minutes and a few performances. She wants it over and over and over again. Not just once, not just a few times. She's being asked to make an unbearable choice. How in the world, when she has tasted the deliciousness of dancing like that, wearing those clothes, wearing those red shoes, being anointed in a way, being anointed, being at her full potential, totally whole and free as she dances. That's what I love about dance. I love dance films. I do. I love musicals. I love dance documentaries because when I watch somebody dance, particularly a woman, you feel the freedom in that woman. That's what she's communicating. But dancers communicate just like actresses do. They communicate all kinds of emotions: grief, sorrow, elation, ecstasy. They communicate feelings through their bodies. That's how they're speaking to us. And Vicky does that. It's such a beautiful thing to see. That's when she's fully free, fully herself. How could you ask this woman to give that up, to relinquish it the way that Julian wants her to? But she doesn't want to lose Julian either. She's in pain in that moment because it's a moment of fragmentation when she wants to be whole. She wants both. She wants to dance and she wants Julian because the romantic love is a different kind of ecstasy that she accesses with Julian. And she has something with Julian that she doesn't have with Lermontov, right? And her freedom, when we choose who we love, when we choose to love, that's also a kind of freedom. That love is real. But for Julian to ask her to give it up, to give up dancing, is very cruel. And for Lermontov to be dismissive and tell her, well, if you choose Julian, you can't have this at all. He's monstrous to even make her choose. The choice at all is the tragedy. But it's not just a choice between two men or just between art and love. It's a choice between wholeness and fragmentation. Dancing is what's in her blood. She can't give it up. That's also why I love the color red. That's what you think of. You think of blood. Passion and the dancing are in her blood. That's what's in her. She wants to be great. She wants to dance. The dancing is what calls to her. It's what haunts her. It's what won't leave her alone in the middle of the night. This is the thing that she must do with her life. And she's gotten a taste of dancing that ballet, of wearing those red shoes. being in that caliber of a performance in a ballet company, and nothing will satiate her after that. Not even Julian, not anything else. Not when something like that gets in your blood. In a way, she's possessed by dance. That's also what I love about the fairy tale a bit, is the shoes won't stop dancing. And so I think it's a really fascinating metaphor, particularly in the film, of how you can be taken over by a passion. You can be consumed by your creative drive. And there are people who feel that. I've even thought about this in terms of writing, that I feel this need to write. I feel this need to express myself. I studied literature in college. I've always been a writer. And I see this podcast as just an extension of my writing, because I write out what I'm going to say. These are my words. They're just spoken instead of being read, but they're a kind of writing for me personally. Fundamentally, it's about my relationship with language and with words. I feel that I am made of words. I feel that my essence is words and language. That is where I feel most alive, is when I'm speaking, when I'm putting life into words. I have to create. I have to speak. I have to write. There's no other option for me, but it can take you over. It can obsess you, where you feel like you're failing if you're not writing something, if you're not putting life into words, or if you haven't written the book that you feel like you're meant to write, or you haven't done the creative thing that you feel like you're supposed to create. Maybe it's an album, maybe it's whatever. It's this thing that can haunt you. Sometimes your unfulfilled creative potential can haunt you. It's this thing that possesses you. You have something, and I feel like a lot of artistic and creative people can maybe relate to this. You feel like you have something that you want to give birth to and to realize, and this thing will not leave you alone. It's the book, the album, the song, the ballet, this thing that haunts you and guides you, almost like a demon, perhaps. It won't go away. It's like humming in the background. And that is a kind of possession. It's like the red shoes that are dancing that you can't take off your feet. It possesses you. It consumes you. Vicky was never gonna really be able to be like other women and just get married and have the kids and leave the stage and be content with that. She needs more. I'm reminded of women like Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf, and women writers and painters and women throughout history, where they felt like, I can't go down that conventional path, the two paths that were available to these women throughout history. You have the regular path where you are not creative and you don't write, you don't paint, you don't dance, you don't do that thing that you're not supposed to do, or you do choose that path. You try to get published, you try to join the ballet, you devote yourself to this art, even though people will judge you for it, or will think that you are too much and too intense. And a woman's not supposed to do that. But they did it anyways. Life without it, without that art, was not enough. Life was not life at all if they didn't fulfill this thing that they were born to do. It's not life if they're not writing, if they're not singing, dancing, or creating in some way. It's a kind of possession. It can be a possession. You can't let it go. You can't really be free of it, because it's this thing in you, this voice that knows you're capable of more. You're capable of more. And that is what drives you in life. Vicky is passionate and intense, and she wants to dance. She wants to live on that stage where she feels free, where she's creating art that other people can experience. And society doesn't know what to do with her. It does not know what to do with a woman like that. She dares to want the magic. She dares to want the ecstasy. And like I said earlier, choosing the ballet at the very end, choosing the dancing, choosing the ecstasy, that is her greatest transgression and rebellion. It is a subversive act. She's going back to this thing that never left her. She never stopped wanting it. We see that. Even when she's away from it, she never stops wanting it. This film is about her wanting. It's about her dreams, her desires, and she's allowing herself to have that, because she knows when she goes back and she dances again, she's going to hurt Julian, but she does it anyway. She dares to need the dancing more than anything else. She dares to desire, to dream, to fulfill her creative drive, to feed the demon and the monster in her, and to light the spark in her, to keep the spark alive. She dares to follow her inner desires. She dares to claim her desire for greatness, to take ownership over it. And when she puts those red shoes on, that is an autonomous choice. Just like when she married Julian, that was a choice as well. But these different choices fragment her, don't they? She's very tormented by it at the end. This is not an easy choice. She's not happy. She's not thrilled. She's crying. She's confused. She's tormented because she wants to dance and she wants to love, but she lives in a world that won't allow all of that, won't allow her fullness and her boundlessness and her desire. These men won't allow it, and the world of 1948 won't allow it. And I think even now, in the world we live in, I don't know if it's fully allowed. Or maybe it's allowed for some women, but not others. But you still have to lay claim to it, even if you live in an environment that does not nurture it and does not support it. It's still important to know who you are inside and what you need to create and what you need to express. I don't feel supported in my own creative life. Hardly anybody listens to this podcast. I don't get tons of praise or attention for what I create, what I write, what I put out into the world. Nobody gave me permission. Still, nobody gives me permission to speak. But I will not live in silence, even if I don't get support, even if I don't get recognition for what I write, what I say, what I share. I will say it anyways, and I will create it anyways, because it is what is inside my soul, and I want to express it. She dares to disobey. She dares to say, I will not put anything above myself. Not a man, not anybody or anything will come before me. I choose those red shoes. I choose to dance, even though it's a sacrifice, even though it will bring pain, and it ultimately brings her death. But I do think there's something powerful about her choosing the ballet, and it feels to me like an act of disobedience. She refuses to leave the ballet for Julian. There's something revolutionary about it to me. I know that a lot of people focus on that she dies as a result, right? I read that Margaret Atwood was very haunted by the red shoes and by her death, by Vicky's death, and her being punished for her recalcitrance and for her disobedience and her choice of the ballet. But I think for me, what's more important is the choice itself and the rebellion, the resistance, the choice that she makes, that I choose the red shoes, I choose the ballet, that she lays claim to it. She says, nothing will come above me and myself. I do feel that she's choosing herself in that moment, choosing her creative self, choosing the thing that makes her feel alive, the thing that is life itself to her, the thing she must do. She must dance, and nothing will come before that. I don't know. I feel very affected by it. She claims it, and even though it comes with consequences and comes with responsibilities, when you claim your birthright to your gift, her gift is that she can dance, and she claims it fully. She steps into it and claims it as her own. That is very powerful to say it, to choose it, that I claim this. I want to write. I want to create. I want to sing. I want to birth this thing inside me. I want to be great. I want to be heard. I want to speak. I want to express myself. And I will do it, and I will stop at nothing to do it. And no one will take it from me. I feel like that's what she's doing. I still think about a scene from Andrei Rublev by Andrei Tarkovsky, where one of the characters says to the other, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something like, do you want to take your gift to the grave? Do you want to take your gift to the grave? That's the gist of it. We have an obligation to share our gifts with the world. I do feel that. And Vicky wants to dance. She wants to dance. Well, I have said everything I wanted to say about this film. I appreciate you listening. I hope that it was of value. I love it. Loved it even more rewatching it for the first time in a few years. It really sparked something in me. I think it's a film that I needed right now. It reminded me of how important my creative life is and how important it is to stay connected to that. So I will stop here. Again, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, keep watching great films.